would like to thank my esteemed colleagues for joining me in a continuing conversation on ethical leadership. Steve, from your perspective, you've had so many exposures to people in leadership roles. What do you see as the characteristics from that?
Well, I think what Candy said is terrific. I think the two things that I would just add to it are, one is just common decency and respect. When you get into employees' hearts and minds and ask them, what could your leaders do better? What could they, to be a better ethical leader? The number one thing they say is just treat us and everybody with respect. Acknowledge that we're human beings. Recognize us for the individuals that we are. And, you know, easy thing to say in the midst of pressures and the pace of business. Hard to do every day. We all know that, but that's the key thing employees say. The other one is actually too often omitted in our conversation. It's not a word that's in fashion in business or in life very much anymore. And in fact, one of the exercises we've done in companies around the world is we say, you know, give us the words that describe a person you admire. Most of the words we get everywhere around the world are the same. The one that they often forget is the word courage. And we think courage has to be like D-Day storming the beaches of Normandy. But courage for a business person is often in the little things we've talked about. I think, you know, business people in like television shows and movies, we get a bad rap as being evil, Machiavellian, you know, control the world, James Bond nemesis. In fact, most of us are wimpy. You ask managers the thing they like to do least, discipline an employee. Tell an employee bad things. Tell an employee that they need to improve here, or they did this wrong, or they did that wrong. Most of us are afraid of doing that. But one of the primary jobs of a leader, of a manager, is to give that coaching. So the person has a chance to change before, in Candy, your great visual metaphor, before something explodes. Let's get it when it's small. Let's help the person when it's small instead of waiting till everything hits the fan. So I'd say compassion, treating others with compassion, and courage would be the two key attributes in addition to the ones Candy said. There's another C that I fear is missing from this conversation. We talked about compassion, we talked about courage, but there's also competency. I mean, one of the traps we may have fallen into so far is we're talking about ethical leadership as if it's separate from good business leadership. It's not. I mean, you can't be a successful business leader of any company, especially one that, like KPMG, that is counted on to be an exemplar of trust, without those ethical characteristics. And one of the ethical characteristics we look for is actually simple competence. I mean, we know this by looking at Dilbert's pointy-haired boss or Steve Carell in The Office. I mean, they do all kinds of bad things and unethical things, but one of the reasons we think that they're unethical and horrid is they're both incompetent in their business spheres. And so, you know, let's make sure that as we talk about ethical leadership, we recognize it's not just about treating people decently and having the courage to make hard decisions, but, you know, knowing your job and knowing the technical things you need to do to be somebody great in advisory services or someone great in audit or tax. You know, I think you can be a Boy Scout and be crappy at audit and be an unethical leader in audit because you don't know what you're doing. So it does take the business skill as well as these other ethical skills.
Yeah, it's interesting.